Hello everyone, and welcome to game number 1 in our best of who knows how many series for our FFA finals that we've got going on. We're going to have PB Head Blues, Soren Johnson, and Cubit32 as our competitors today. I do believe it is once again going to be the first to 2 victories, as first to 3 would take literally all day if things went a little bit crazy. But for now, this is going to be the first one. People just looking to pick up an early lead for themselves. And speaking of an early lead, PB Head has founded with an absolutely massive amount of debt. He's already sitting in a double B rating for that. And what has he gotten for his troubles? It looks like he's got a decent scavenger location, maybe not the best. He does have carbon and aluminum both adjacent to his base. And there are definitely good things to say for that, but we're going to have to see if that was actually worth the ridiculous amount of debt he picked up. Soren went next. He's thrown down in the obvious scientific location. A lot of iron, a lot of water. Easy to utilize that as a scientist, but he will have to be careful for his aluminum requirements long term. Blues and Cubit were the last 2 down, I believe Blues being the very final player. So Cubit has taken another scavenger location. He has just grabbed up a ridiculous amount of carbon. That's all he cared about, was taking all kinds of carbon. And it's going to be interesting seeing him use that moving forward. 3 carbon tiles is a lot this early in the game. He will have an extra for having founded later, so maybe it'll work out all right for him, but he's going to have to be careful what he does on HQ level 2 to make sure he can continue moving through the game successfully. Blues, on the other hand, he was our last found. He just took a very standard, solo expansive, 2 iron, 1 aluminum opening. He's going to move into his steel. He might take some power. He might take some water. We'll just have to see where things go from here. Slowdown Strike is going to be our first auction of the game. This one is very important. There are adrenaline boosts available. Everybody kind of would like to make sure. They don't necessarily care who they're going to hit with this immediately, but they really aren't going to want to be hit by it. On the other hand, PB Head going to take that for $12,000. I do not think that was an appropriate decision on PB Head's part. He is looking to be falling out of this game very, very quickly at this point. 70,000 debt almost, and we have not even hit midnight on the first day yet. That is not a position you want to be in, because when that interest rate starts rolling in, PB Head's going to be in a lot of trouble unless he can find a way to pay back some of that debt very quickly. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look at Black Market this game, and then we'll move forward seeing what these players have been doing with their expansions. So we do have Pirates, Magnetic Storms, Power Surges, Adrenaline Boosts, Slowdown Strikes, Network Viruses, Dynamite Mutinies, and Goon Squads all available this game. Slowdown Strike's not available. Obviously, PB Head just kind of has one of those locked up for himself from that auction. So this is a pretty stacked Black Market, honestly. Adrenaline Boosts and Power Surges, both fantastic. Now, Soren in particular is going to have to watch out for these Pirates and Magnetic Storms as he's shipping resources over to his little corner of the map if he decides to take anything away from this very small little section he has set up for himself. It'll be interesting to see what he can do with that long term. Whereas Adrenaline Boost, Network Virus, and Power Surge are all obviously powerful, and then Dynamite and Mutiny can fight back against somebody who might get an early off-world up as long as they don't get too much of a lead from their adrenaline boosts. We'll just have to see how all that goes down. PB Head is the first person hit by Black Market this game. No big surprise there. People are going to want to keep him locked down so he keeps his debt piling up and he falls out of this game ever more rapidly. You can see he's already, from our first interest tick, pushed down into that C level of debt, having to pay 14% interest on that. Not a position you want to be in. But he has managed to expand into some glass. He's gotten some aluminum down. He's moving into a patent office already on HQ level 3. Very dangerous move, I think, out of him. But he does have the silicon locked up. He does have some water pouring in. Nice high water tile right there. So we'll just have to see how all that goes. Now, PB was the first HQ3, but everybody else has made it there by now as well. Blue's moving into some farms, getting some power for himself. No big surprise. He is the one operating on steel mills and metal mines. He's going to need plenty of power to help compensate for that. Whereas Cubit, he actually on HQ level 2 just moved straight into glass. Maybe a bit of a gamble from him, but it looks as though it worked out reasonably well. He's getting in plenty of silicon. He did make it to HQ2. He's got the water secured, And he's all set up to kind of just start moving toward HQ level 4, the very, very standard Cubit play of the only thing I care about is upgrades. Literally the only thing Cubit ever does in any of these games is upgrade. PB Head has actually gone ahead and moved out of glass, as is Cubit. Wow, both of them just immediately being like, all right, it's nighttime, day is on the way, I want some power online. PB Head, definitely a reasonable decision out of him, considering his debt is already pushing toward D very, very quickly. Will almost certainly hit there with interest ticks, unless this power production does a very, very good job for him. With Superconductor, he may be able to pull it off. But I would say Blues is actually set up in a pretty nice position to move forward. He's got that food flowing in. PB Head and Cubit have done a very nice job making glass cheap for him. So Blues can continue through upgrades very, very easily, potentially, as we move forward this game. And Soren should be in a very similar position. He's got decent power set up, so he's actually paying down some debt right now. He's got money coming in from his electrolysis reactors, a little bit less, due to the fact that he'd like to be having more power. But as you can see, very quickly, HQ level 4, plenty of glass bought up as well. He can easily move into farms if he likes, which I think I would if I were him. He can easily keep pushing forward to the patent office or a variety of other things. It's just, I think Soren and Blues have actually been set up in fantastic positions just by PB Head and Cubit getting in each other's way consistently. PB Head does have some of his power torn away, and unfortunately for him, there was a power surplus. That is not something PB Head was going to be looking for. But nonetheless, he managed to pay down his debt so that he only accrued, I believe, a 10% interest rate when debt ticked over. 10 or 12 is what he was probably looking at there. And he's not knocked out of the game just yet. So even though this power surplus was certainly not what he was looking for, he should be able to survive because of it. Or despite it, I should say. Cubit has moved back into glass production himself. Not surprised by that at all. Cubit committed very, very heavily to silicon. And so getting out of glass was a little bit awkward for him, as that allowed the silicon price to plummet just a bit. His glass is now strong, but anyone else could just move into glass as well and take up some of those profits for themselves. So he's going to have to hope that nobody does that in the short term so he can push on through very easily and continue buying whatever black market effects he deems necessary. Alright, I missed whoever got the mule. Alright, it was Blues. Blues is the one who picks up that mule. Don't know if he needed it for anything or if he just felt in a very comfortable position right now. I would if I were him. And felt, alright, well, I can afford to spend a fair amount of debt just to secure this in case I need it later, because things can always get a little bit awkward. Alright, Soren has moved into, as expected, some farms and a patent office. It'll be interesting to see what he can do with that, considering PB Head has been working quite hard to utilize his, picking up financial instruments, nanotech, and superconductor already. But, however, he is using the patent lab at this point. What's he going for now? He wants virtual reality, says PB Head. Whereas Soren has decided he's after carbon scrubbing. I expect PB Head to mostly stick to this upper section. He doesn't have the cash to dip down into these lower expensive areas, but Soren, he should have that money. He's frozen right now due to a power surge, but he's scientific. He really doesn't care all that much. I expect him to stick to this bottom half for the most part. It looks like he's already queued up virtual reality. That will be a bit of a disappointment for him, I believe, when PB Head picks it up. But afterward, I would expect to see him more in this general area. Something like thinking machines in particular might be a strong decision out of Soren. Blues is HQ level 5, and so with that, we're going to take a look at what off-world market prices are this game. So far, nothing worth writing home about, really. You've got 370 on oxygen. Nothing else even like remotely good up in the life support section. Let's check elsewhere. 357 on steel is worth paying attention to. Certainly. And then glass down at 192, electronics at 269. This is just not a particularly strong off-world game, which is certainly not something Blues is going to want to see, considering he did found expansive, and he's been given a leg up by PB Head and Cubit this game. Speaking of PB Head and Cubit, Blues is actually sitting on enough money to just flat out kill one of them. And I don't think there's a whole lot they could do about it. They would need defense from other players to survive. I don't know if Blues has identified this fact or if he even cares. He may just be pushing forward into the off-world market. It is weak, this game. relatively speaking, but it does have adrenaline boost to back it up. It might not be a terrible decision. And on top of that, Blue's just sitting on this money forces PB Head to kind of defend himself already, spending money where he doesn't want to. Cubit, on the other hand, is making the standard Cubit play of, well, I'm just going to keep going regardless and hope that nobody kills me. It's going to be interesting to see if somebody ever punishes him for that. Alright, Blue's choosing to just defend himself rather than attack anybody just yet. It could work out okay. He's still set up in a strong position. I mean, he was the first to HQ level 5 as expansive. Soren is going to grab up Water Engine. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, considering he's scientific with a patent office down. If he wants anything like that, why not just take teleportation? But hey, it's Soren. He can do what he wants. Alright, guys. Speaking of, by the way, water has gotten very expensive, almost $80 a piece, and so now is when we're going to see who has set up the best for this situation. Cubit most certainly has not, and he is very quickly going to start losing money if he continues with this production. The way that water is looking these days, nobody is really collecting a huge amount of it, and on top of that, Soren has now started burning it instead of fuel for his freighters, so that's just an unfortunate situation for Cubit all around. Blues, on the other hand, he's set up a bit better for it. He's transitioned out of his food, I believe is what this was, into chems. He's now collecting quite a bit of water, and PB Head should be in a similar position. He is collecting some water. Not sure why PB Head's power keeps getting knocked out by power surges over here, but once again, people can do what they want. PB Head has also managed to accrue quite a number of black market items here. I imagine some of those he's been sitting on because they kept getting thrown at him, but others he's likely purchased for himself and just had sitting around. Things like that adrenaline boost. And he does use a couple of mutinies, trying to take some power away, trying to pay down his debt the best that he can. Unfortunately, he does get mutinied right back on one of them. And Scavenger's solar panels in particular, not necessarily something you particularly want to attack. Alright, more stock purchases going on. Nobody getting aggressive. Everybody very, very passive once again. PB Head, it actually looks like is committed to just buying up his own stock before even moving to HQ level 5. Once again, I don't really know why people have been bothering knocking out his power if they're not going to go for a killing blow. It is a bit of an odd decision. Alright, glass shortage coming out from Blues. Doesn't appear that anybody else is in glass. It's unlikely they have a stockpile. But glass is not particularly expensive. On the other hand, I don't mind this move, all told. The hacker array does make some sense when the off-world market is weak. He's also pushed into a couple of engineering labs, and he should be in a position where if he sees an opponent throw down an off-world, he will be able to follow it up very, very quickly and still have taken an advantage with his extra tiles, getting this hacker array down and getting these engineering labs online. Claim auction, we're going to have to see how that goes.
12,000, 14,000.
PB Head, please don't bid on this. That's all I'm going to throw out there. Alright, PB Head has managed to push to HQ level 5. Finally. After his tearing start, he just got shut down so hard, was forced to keep paying down debt and focusing on power production. Not a position you want to be in, but it is the price you pay for getting your choice in location that early in the game. Glass shortage coming on in. Did anybody buy into this? Yes, people have actually bought into this fairly heavily. Blue should know that and be able to make a strong sell here. We'll have to see what happens to this price and when he chooses to. Nope, he's just sticking in it. He doesn't even care. He's going for another one. That's what he wants right now. He's all in on that. So both of the others taking a fair amount of profit off of that immediately. Blues, however, is playing the long game. He wants to make sure that he gets a lot of cash out of his glass before he's forced to transition out of it. Alright. Dynamite onto the Pleasure Dome. That almost certainly came from PB Head. Just trying to make sure his own Pleasure Dome is continually making or paying off all the debt that it possibly can. Trying to stay in this game the best that he can. More mutinies all over the place. All on this water pump. Water is pretty expensive. Mutinying the water pump does make quite a bit of sense. Alright. Let's take a good look at the overall situation at this point, because I have a feeling Cubit has pulled back into this game a lot better than anybody should have ever allowed him to. As you can see, he's currently sitting on about $80,000. Blue's still with a very, very strong lead. In fact, Blue's having so much money. The game is calculating he could get a shift-click buyout, it looks like, if he only pushed to about 20% more. This glass shortage certainly doing plenty of work for him. It looks like he also managed to knock out a fair amount of his opponent's cash with that. As you can see, Cubit's down to about 57 now, so he almost certainly lost money there. Nice use of shortages by Blues. Just going to continue on forward with that and see what he can get done. Chemicals are getting dangerous. Everybody's got to watch out for that. Some people have them researched, so they're doing a reasonably good job for them. But Soren is the one who has pushed into the off-world market with adrenaline boosts, and he has decided that instead of going after anyone weak, he wants to pick a fight with the biggest player on the board. I don't know about that decision out of Soren. Blues has in fact bought back all of his own stock. He says no stock advantage for you. Unacceptable. And Soren did then turn his attention on over to Cubit, who was in a D rating at that point. And Soren managed to get 2 of those stocks purchased. Not a whole lot of an advantage for Soren, though, off of his early off-world market so far. Still sitting on a very, very small amount of cash. And as you can see, he's not launching for any profits that are really notable. I mean, it's still a decent building, and the boost obviously helps it out quite a bit, but these are very, very weak launches, relatively speaking, and so the off-world rush is not going to get as much done as one might expect. A bit surprising to me that Blues never went for an off-world himself. He's been making all kinds of glass, he had a lot of steel production down, and just completely decided against it. Despite its weakness, obviously expansive players do a decent job with off-worlds most of the time, considering the fact that they have half off on steel. 200 steel, significantly less than 400. When it comes to these things. But with these prices staying very, very high, the gamble has paid off for Blues. It's going reasonably well for him. Unfortunately, his water keeps getting frozen, and that's not a good thing when you're relying so heavily on those water resources anyway to try and make your profit. Alright, what's everybody else up to this game? Let's take a look. Cubit actually sitting on 3 engineering labs. Talk about greedy. He just wants all the tech in the world right now, not as concerned about immediately making any noteworthy sum of money. He's already got his water production boosted. He's working on power at the moment, an interesting decision, but hopefully it will help him pay down his debt and allow him to stay in this game a bit more effectively. But I think playing the long game right now with these engineering labs might be a bit of a mistake, considering the angry beast that is Soren at this point is coming over to kill him. His launches only get better and better as he keeps producing fuel, ignoring the ridiculous water price everyone else has created.
Look at all the money.
And Soren, he might be able to bring down Cubit in just a moment here, already sitting on the 92%. One has to assume that is his immediate target. However, he might be a bit too worried about Blues in the background, but Blues has stalled out. He is not successfully making money at this point. The shortages aren't really going his way. Water might have been causing too much of a problem. And Soren does go ahead and get the buy to knock the potential frontrunner Cubit out of game number 1. He will not be winning this tournament match anytime soon. Alright, 239,000 debt for Soren was a problem. Not so much anymore, considering that HQ purchase definitely was a nice boost for him. And what has he chosen to done with all his extra claims? It looks like he's gotten some of Cubit's silicon back. Looks like he wants some of Cubit's carbon back. And this little guy, this is just an engineering lab getting constructed. And then a few more claims are just going to generally be used for some decent production nearby. Those are not all on top of carbon, which makes me wonder, did Soren pick up slant drilling? No, he did not. But he does have carbon scrubbing already, so it should be fine. No problem whatsoever ignoring the carbon when you've already got carbon scrubbing. It's almost why I always like slant drilling better on a scientist, because sometimes you can just get that carbon anyway. Alright, looks like Soren finally got a bit lackadaisical. with his goon squads, he is going to be forced to rebuild this off-world market constantly at this point if he does not re-goon it. I expect he won't. Goons are very, very expensive. So suddenly this off-world is not going to be making nearly the money that it was in that mid-period of the game that allowed him to get to that qubit purchase. And everybody else has a chance to keep catching up. But once again, Blues, he has stalled out completely. He is not making money right now. Absolutely just has not been successful in that. Some of these buildings should be to the point of making money shortly, but I feel like that he's been spending an awful lot on the black market to tear through Soren's goon squads, and so he hasn't been successfully actually accumulating any degree of wealth for himself in the process of that. Meanwhile, PB Head, he's just making the qubit play as well, going into a ridiculous number of engineering labs, but in favor of PB Head is the fact that he was not knocked out of the game already. So the engineering labs are actually getting something done. These chemical labs are very, very efficient, doing a great job of making money. He's also moving into his life support resources. I wonder if it was enough at all, or if it will be enough to overtake Blues. Blues engineering labs, not functional at the moment. I don't like that. If you're going to have a building down, make sure it's doing something. This is allowing PB Head the opportunity to potentially catch up in tech, an area that Soren, it would seem, has successfully managed to stay in. He's been getting that oxygen production running. Not the worst idea, although I think I would have preferred to see fuel, given the way everything has worked out. He's trying to keep that oxygen price low, in part because the oxygen price is the best off-world, but fuel isn't much worse. And it is much easier to make a large amount of fuel than oxygen. Even with his oxygen so well upgraded, he's making less of it than fuel at the moment because he's feeding some of that. And that's because he's feeding some fuel into chem labs. Oxygen just very, very difficult to actually benefit from the engineering lab sometimes, as you just make such a small amount of it at any given moment unless there's dry ice on the ground. Something to keep in mind for the future. Now, Blues is in a very nice position in that he doesn't have any debt, so his stock price is almost as high as Soren's, and if he can successfully make a large amount of cash this game, he could be in a position to bring it back. Now, Soren, he's not really worried about anybody just yet. Neither of his opponents have a large amount of cash. PB Head is sitting on an off-world market, but Blues has the money, so Soren suddenly has a decision to make here. Soren needs to decide if he's more concerned about the pile of cash that Blues is already sitting on, or if he needs to worry about the fact that PB Head has that off-world market online, and what potentially is that going to do to him. I love listening to Dynamite blowing up off-world markets. When it's not mine, I gotta be fair. It's kind of frustrating when it's yours. But it's just such a fun little noise, isn't it? Alright. Dust storms have been causing food to be a bit of a difficulty this game. Players shouldn't be too concerned about that. They can just upgrade their food. They'll be alright. It means that their food profits are going to be strong for an extended period of time now. You can see even with the dust storm rolling in, Blues is making almost 300 a second from that. I imagine he'd rather have that money now, but it will be strong production in the future for him as well. Soren transitioning back into food. Soren doesn't have nanotech this game, which is making things a bit more awkward for him, whereas PB Head does, but it's not getting as much work done for him as one might expect, that carbon price simply down at $7. PB Head has also moved out of his engineering labs, identifying the fact that he needs to be making money now, and so he is just going to rely on the tech that he had already set up in order to move forward this game. That could work out very well for him, but it still looks like he's lagging behind both Blues and Soren in terms of cold hard cash at the moment. Only sitting on about 200,000. Soren's currently above 5, and Blues is still back at 300, so that early buyout, or the earlier buyout this game, has been working out reasonably well for Soren. He's going for an electronics shortage. I don't see anybody else in that production, so that could work out very, very well. It's not great money from electronics, but as long as nobody else is making it, it could still definitely be the right decision. Alright, food. What are we going to do here? Food's already up above 300 with a shortcoming. Freeze onto Soren's food production is almost certainly a strong decision. But I don't know if it's going to be enough. Soren already sitting on $600,000. He just has the very awkward decision of who do I kill, if anyone. Does Soren need to just sit and wait and pay down his debt, potentially, if things get a little bit awkward, rather than going for a purchase? Try and force people into a position where they need to purchase each other in order to feel comfortable staying alive, and then Soren can simply take the game from there. On the other hand, with all this debt to pay down, Soren could potentially make a purchase and then drive his stock price sky high, and that would allow him access to the black market again without needing to actually pay down debt. We'll just have to see which direction Soren chooses to go. But he is at the 100% and the red button on PB head. He has not decided to pull the trigger. He's selected to not go for that. He's just not interested right now. Which means that he may be looking more at blues at this stage of the game. Keep in mind that PB Head did have that off-world market down. It looks like he has in fact scrapped it. Trying to gain those resources back with nanotech just in the moment, it looks like. He is not going to be trying to make any more money from that off-world market this game. Very interesting decision by PB Head. Just scrapping his own off-world. Alright. Mutinies and dynamites galore on the one remaining off-world is no big surprise. This is another reason that Soren could have potentially selected to knock out PB Head. It gets rid of 2/3 of the black market that could potentially be directed against him, but Soren says no. He wants to bring down blues. He is more worried about blues than PB Head. I have to say, I kind of agree with that decision, all told. PB Head made several moves. I don't know if it's actually going to end up winning him the game. But in that moment, it makes sense because PB Head had made several short-term moves. Getting rid of his off-world market, getting rid of his engineering labs. All of those indicated that PB Head was just going to be making the same amount of money the rest of the game, basically. Or less and less money throughout the entire game, one should say. Because he is no longer pushed into an investment that will allow him to continue to build on himself and make more and more money. He doesn't have an engineering lab to just keep making more stuff. He doesn't have a hacker array at the moment. He's working on it in order to turn his money into more money. He doesn't have an off-world to avoid on-world prices and make ridiculous amounts of money for his resources. So in some ways, it makes sense for Soren to be more concerned about blues, who is still in those engineering labs, could have more easily transitioned into an off-world, was already trying to use the hacker array, had the greater amount of territory. All of these things together potentially made blues more of a threat than PB Head. But I don't know if it's gonna have been enough. Soren needs to push to $715,000, dropping by the second as PB Head is gaining maybe a little bit of debt per second from life support. Oh yeah, PB Head's actually gaining a tremendous amount of debt per second from fuel in particular, costing him a very large amount of money. So Soren, I do believe, is going to manage to clean this up. As you can see, PB Head at the moment only needs $900,000, but Soren has a very large amount of debt that he can potentially pay off in order to put himself in a good position. Why are you people making... Oh man, I get why they're making chemicals. It's because they're so well upgraded, but look at this fuel price. I want to see these transition into fuel very, very quickly. Steel's not that expensive. It's almost certainly the correct decision, and I would love to see it in a moment. I don't really like these farms, but I guess they work okay. They are adjacent, so it could work out all right. And plus, water's not particularly expensive in the moment. Regardless, my initial point was, Soren has a large amount of debt he can very safely pay down. He is making significantly more money than PB Head. PB Head, taking advantage of his colony advantage, would cost him a large amount of money for the most part. Most of the effective offensive black market items have been pushed to very, very, very high prices. All except for, of course, the magnetic storm, which Soren is going to be using just to make sure PB Head doesn't have water and can't make money. I think a very strong decision out of Soren. He is looking at that 90%. He may need to pay down debt in just a moment here. Certainly something I would encourage Soren to do. He should not be scared of the long game at all. He needs to pay down his debt. There he goes. Soren's paying down his debt. Strong decision on his part, in my opinion. Hopefully it was in time that he's going to be all right. Although he didn't pay down a ridiculous amount of it. He could have just paid it all and started making that money over and over and over again. But he didn't want to. He wants to try and push for this kill on PB Head before things get too out of control. Not necessarily a bad decision, but the interest payment, he needs to be sure that does not catch him by surprise. More magnetic storms coming out. Trying to make sure that PB Head does not have the water he needs. Soren has transitioned into more electrolysis once again. He has a ridiculous amount of debt to pay down. This is playing with fire here, and I don't see a particularly good reason for it. Yes, he only needs $40,000 more, but what if PB Head catches him by surprise by a short? What if he loses focus for just one moment? Oh man, I still think Soren should end up taking this. It should not be a major problem for him. The magnetic storms are still a strong decision, forcing a very awkward position out of the water. Soren is at the red button, and he is going to take game number 1 here. And he is halfway to winning this FFA majority buyout, destroy buyout tournament. Very nice. It was a close one at the end there. PB Head almost hanging on enough. But really, it wasn't that close, and here's why. Because Soren could have just paid down debt, and then he would have had it anyway. Right, guys? It looked close. It really wasn't. There was just no need for Soren to be playing quite at that edge there. Yes. And PB Head, I feel like if he hadn't made the decisions to transition out of those engineering labs and that off-world market, that was his only real potential to bring it back into this game. Why was Blues worth so much more than me, I wonder? Well, Blues had paid down debt. I think it was mostly debt. PB had always had debt and Blues didn't, from what I remember. There's also just the simple fact that a big thing you need to remember, guys, is scavengers will frequently have low stock prices. And the reason for that is, as I understand it, remember that assets are counted into your stock price. So all of your buildings, as I understand it, will influence your stock price, and I believe your buildings will adjust in value to the value of resources that are used to build them. Now, I might be 100% off my rocker there, but that's as I understand it. So frequently, scavengers will have low stock prices relative to everybody else because everybody else uses steel for their buildings. As you can see, buildings are listed, structures are listed on the stock market list, on the what influences your stock price. And so because scavengers use carbon, and carbon is very cheap most of the time, their buildings aren't worth much, and on top of that, they don't have as many of them as an expansive player would. And both of those things could lead to a very significant difference. Value of structures is fixed, you think. Nonetheless, expansive players end up with more structures, and that would certainly influence things. You think, okay. Even if value of structures are fixed, the player with more of them would have a higher stock price. Values buildings with starting price of resources. So the concept still stands that an expansive player's buildings are still very, very valuable. Yeah. And scavengers' buildings are not necessarily as valuable, as they are consisting only of carbon and aluminum, even with the steel reduction. Steel is so expensive that it ends up working out in steel's favor. Could explain why scientists always have the ridiculous stock price they do. Level 20 scientific headquarters. Well, yeah. Alright, guys. That's going to do it for game number 1 and our quick little discussion responding to PB's question here. We did have an explanation that they are based on these starting prices. Who had the other lab? PB had the other lab. Yes. PB had the other lab. I don't know about that, losing the game without carbon scrubbing for sure. Maybe it was kind of important, but it feels to me... I mean, carbon scrubbing got something done with this electronics, yes. Electronics were very, very strong, but food was pretty important too. I think electronics were only so strong because you were the only one ever in them. Alright guys, we're going to go ahead and hop out of there and just get on over to game number 2.